Welcome back. All right, it is hard to believe it's been 7 years since the 2016 draft. That was the first draft that I covered on this channel. The 2016 draft was also an interesting one in that there was the question of Laine and Matthews, but we never really had any idea that that Laine was really a threat to go first overall. So the fact that when you look at the lists that were out there before the draft, there was only one of the four that I found that had Laine at first, and it was Corey Pronman. Now, before people roast Corey Pronman for having Laine first and Matthews second, he's the only one that saw Clayton Keller as a top five player in that draft, although everybody had Puljujärvi third. So Puljujärvi and the issues he's had may warrant an in-depth video as well, but I want to talk about Juolevi today. Juolevi is a combination of two things. One, yes, Matthew Tkachuk was the higher rated prospect of the two. So Tkachuk should have gone to Vancouver and Juolevi should have gone to Calgary. But Benning drafting, and again, the statement at the time was it was by best player available, but it really felt like position because back in 2016, defense was the problem for Vancouver. It's 2023. Defense is still kind of an issue for Vancouver, but it's okay because now they fixed it. So, which again, this is part of the reason why I've become really cynical now because I've been hearing this for years. Okay, we fixed it. No, you didn't. So, anyways, it's like the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, we fixed the motivator on the. Nah, you didn't. You didn't. Next time you try to go to hyperspace, can we get that noise? It doesn't matter. All right. So the draft rankings are interesting looking back to 2016. Hockey Prospect had Matthews first, Laine second, Puljujärvi third, Dubois fourth, Tkachuk fifth, Juolevi sixth. This is close. This is honestly close. Sportsnet, Matthews, Laine, Puljujärvi, Tkachuk, Dubois, and Juolevi. So here you have Tkachuk and Dubois flipped. So Dubois is ranked fifth. Mackenzie had Matthews, Laine, Puljujärvi, Tkachuk, Dubois, Juolevi. So the same six here as Sportsnet. Corey Pronman, again, outside the box thinking here. Laine first, Matthews second. Would have been a choice. Can you imagine if that had happened? Puljujärvi third. Clayton Keller fourth. Dubois fifth. Tkachuk sixth. Alex Nylander at seventh. And Juolevi at eighth. So Pronman was lower on Juolevi than the others. He also had Laine going first. But that draft, if you look, you'll see Juolevi is not ahead of any of those top prospects. Now, Juolevi had a very good year, his draft year, playing for the London Knights. They won the Memorial Cup, and he was playing with Matthew Tkachuk. So this is a pretty star-studded roster that London had that year, and they won the Memorial Cup. So Juolevi was seen as the best defenseman in that draft class, and he was. After that, he then went home and played in Europe, and that's where the injury problems start up. So we talk about Juolevi and whether or not he should have been drafted ahead of Tkachuk. I think the answer is no on that, and I think we've always known the answer was no. But then what happens with Juolevi is he ends up being labeled as a bust, but there are other things around it. I'm not saying he didn't bust at the National Hockey League level, but there's a Gord Kluzak feel to it. I did a video on Gord Kluzak. I've talked about why I don't view Gord Kluzak as being a bust, even though he didn't play that long in the NHL. He didn't play that many games. Juolevi hasn't played that many games in the NHL either. But really, with Juolevi, injuries caused a lot of this. Now, of course, there was a talk of a video game addiction and whether or not Juolevi had a video, which again, I thought distracted from the reality that this was a player who had been really banged up too. So, 2018 offseason, he'd had back pain. That led to a surgery to repair a disc in his back. So, does that heal 100%? Probably. However, 2018-2019, he had 13 points in 18 games with the Utica Comets, which was Vancouver's farm team at the time, and then suffered a knee injury, which shortened his season. So now, within 12 months, he's gone through a disc that needed to be repaired in his back and a major knee injury. So this is a young defenseman that would feel a lot of pressure to make it to the Canucks. He did play through nagging pain a lot. I always thought it was unfair too. Travis Green did the bag skate, and it blew up Juolevi. Juolevi was face down on the ice, and that picture went viral. And I always felt like that was it was mean, I thought, for people to do that. And, I mean, those bag skates are brutal. And when you've got somebody who's been dealing with back pain, knee injury, plus he had hip soreness that caused him to miss nearly a month of 2019-2020, yeah, he's pretty banged up. I'm not surprised that he would get blown up doing a bag skate. And it just all added up. It hurt his mobility, and it really negatively impacted his career. I don't know that Juolevi ever would have, in his wildest dreams, in our wildest dreams as Canuck fans, become a top 2 defenseman. But a good top 4 defensive defenseman, I think that was there. I think he could have been. 2019-2020 debuted in the 2020 playoffs. He played one game against the Minnesota Wild, and that was analyzed into the ground. That was absolutely, and right away it was, well, he's playing sheltered minutes. Well, yeah, it's his debut. Of course he's going to play sheltered minutes. There's very few that come into the league and play like Makar did or like Torrey Krug did when he debuted for the Bruins in the playoffs that year. It's rare. It's more often that you bring a player in, you put him in sheltered minutes, you make sure he's in a position to succeed. You don't want to put a defenseman in a position where they're not going to succeed, and in a playoff position and in a playoff role, you want to make sure your team has a better chance to win. So you're going to put him out in protected minutes. Now, 2020, 2021, he did play 23 games for the Canucks. 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. At times, he looked very good. Especially defensively, he looked pretty solid. But it just wasn't clicking, and of course, he was still having problems staying healthy and staying in the lineup. And I think that the mobility issues that he was dealing with as well causes him to end up being a healthy scratch and all this fun stuff. And then it leaked out that the Canucks were looking to move on, right? That the Juolevi experiment was pretty much done. Now that he had been physically broken down, now we're going to move him. So October 11th of 2020, when he was traded to Florida for Juho Lammikko and Noah Juulsen. Now, Lammikko, I thought, performed well in a bottom 6 role for the Canucks as a stopgap. And I understand why they moved on, but I thought as a stopgap he was okay. Noah Juulsen, of course, still playing for the Abbotsford Canucks, re-signed this summer. Good on him. And so that trade is kind of a win for Vancouver because he doesn't really make it in Florida. Florida, he plays 10 games. He ends up on waivers on March the 6th of 2022, and the Detroit Red Wings, needing a defenseman, decide to pick him up. He ended up playing 8 games with the Red Wings and did not distinguish himself from the rest. And so the Wings don't end up holding on to him. And it is one of those things that it is too bad because he just doesn't play that many games in the NHL. I understand why he hasn't. I also understand that the Ducks signed him in 2022 during the offseason, and he doesn't play a single game for the Anaheim Ducks. He played, I think, 39 games for San Diego. The San Diego Gulls had a miserable season as well. So the Ducks didn't have a great season. Their farm team didn't either. And now Juolevi finds himself as an unrestricted free agent. I think Juolevi, if not for the injuries, would probably be a top 4 defenseman. Might be a top 4 defenseman in Vancouver right now. I don't think that would have silenced any of the criticism over not drafting Tkachuk. I don't think anything Juolevi could have done would have silenced that. Now, when you look at Tkachuk down in Florida, you could point and say, well, see, Matthew Tkachuk wouldn't have wanted to stay in Vancouver either. Fine, but then the Canucks would have been able to trade Tkachuk, and who knows what they might have been able to get back for him. Not to mention the years with him in the lineup, the Canucks might have been able to. If they had Tkachuk in those 2020 playoffs with that team that knocked off St. Louis in the first round and gave Vegas everything they could handle in terms of Demko and Markstrom trying to steal games, you had a goal scorer like Tkachuk, you had a shift disturber like Tkachuk, who knows? But that's the thing, we'll never know. It is one of those things that we can look back on and say that was a missed opportunity. And really, from almost any draft, I think you can find a player who was, again, with Juolevi, was he drafted in the wrong spot? Yeah, probably, right? And I'm saying probably because there may be somebody who can try to make an argument for why Dubois or why Tkachuk wouldn't have been the right pick for Vancouver, although I can't come up with one. And I was kind of ticked off at the time because when Columbus drafts Dubois, Puljujarvi goes to Edmonton, right? And I was like, well, that's not fair. Edmonton's getting a star player in Puljujarvi. That's a steal for them. But now Vancouver can take Tkachuk. I'm so excited. And then drafted from the London Knights, Olli Juolevi. What are you doing? You could almost see like the Calgary table just jumping up and down in joy because Tkachuk, who was number 4 on a couple of lists here, he dropped down to them. And the rest is history. So I do think that, as a current unrestricted free agent, I would be very surprised if Juolevi signs in the NHL this year. And if he does, I would think he's purely an AHL talent at this point. And it shows how quickly that can happen. He's drafted a top 5 pick in 2016. And by 2019, we're talking about, well, is he ever going to make it? So 3 years out from the draft, there was already that talk. And sadly, he never ended up being a regular in the NHL. Again, 2020, 2021, I kind of got my hopes up that maybe he can develop into a top 6 defensive defenseman. It just never happened. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.